The Complete Works of William Shakespeare by William Shakespeare. Act 3. Scene I. A chase in the north of England. Enter two keepers, with crossbows in their hands. First keeper. Under this thick-grown brake we'll shroud ourselves, for through this lawn anon the deer will come, and in this covert will we make our stand, culling the principal of all the deer. Second keeper. I'll stay above the hill, so both may shoot. First keeper. That cannot be, the noise of thy crossbow will scare the herd, and so my shoot is lost. Here stand we both, and aim we at the best, and for the time shall not seem tedious, I'll tell thee what befell me on a day in this self-place where now we mean to stand. Second keeper. Here comes a man, let's stay till he be past. Enter King Henry, disguised, with a prayer book. King Henry. From Scotland am I stolen, even of pure love, to greet mine own land with my wishful sight. No, Harry, 'tis no land of thine, thy place is filled, thy sceptre wrung from thee, thy balm washed off wherewith thou wast anointed. No bending knee will call thee Caesar now, no humble suitors press to speak for right, no, not a man comes for redress of thee, for how can I help them and not myself? First keeper. Aye, here's a deer whose skin's a keeper's fee. This is the quondam king, let's seize upon him. King Henry. Let me embrace thee, sour adversity, for wise men say it is the wisest course. Second keeper. Why linger we? Let us lay hands upon him. First keeper. Forbear a while, we'll hear a little more. King Henry. My queen and son are gone to France for aid, and, as I hear, the great commanding Warwick is thither gone to crave the French king's sister to wife for Edward. If this news be true, poor queen and son, your labor is but lost, for Warwick is a subtle orator, and Louis a prince soon won with moving words. By this account, then, Margaret may win him, for she's a woman to be pitied much. Her sighs will make a battery in his breast, her tears will pierce into a marble heart. The tiger will be mild while she doth mourn, and Nero will be tainted with remorse to hear and see her plaints, her brinish tears. Aye, but she's come to beg, Warwick to give. She, on his left side, craving aid for Henry, he, on his right, asking a wife for Edward. She weeps, and says her Henry is deposed, he smiles, and says his Edward is installed, that she, poor wretch, for grief can speak no more. Whiles Warwick tells his title, smooths the wrong, inferreth arguments of mighty strength, and in conclusion wins the king from her with promise of his sister, and what else, to strengthen and support King Edward's place. O Margaret, thus 'twill be, and thou, poor soul, art then forsaken, as thou went'st forlorn. Second keeper. Say, what art thou that talk'st of kings and queens? King Henry. More than I seem, and less than I was born to, a man at least, for less I should not be, and men may talk of kings, and why not I? Second keeper. Aye, but thou talk'st as if thou wert a king. King Henry. Why, so I am in mind, and that's enough. Second keeper. But if thou be a king, where is thy crown? King Henry. My crown is in my heart, not on my head, not decked with diamonds and Indian stones, not to be seen. My crown is called content, a crown it is that seldom kings enjoy. Second keeper. Well, if you be a king crowned with content, your crown content, and you must be contented to go along with us, for as we think, you are the king King Edward hath deposed, and we his subjects, sworn in all allegiance, will apprehend you as his enemy. King Henry. But did you never swear, and break an oath? Second keeper. No, never such an oath, nor will not now. King Henry. Where did you dwell when I was King of England? Second keeper. Here in this country, where we now remain. King Henry. I was anointed king at 9 months old, my father and my grandfather were kings, and you were sworn true subjects unto me, and tell me, then, have you not broke your oaths? First keeper. No, for we were subjects but while you were king. King Henry. Why am I dead? Do I not breathe a man? Ah, simple men, you know not what you swear. Look, as I blow this feather from my face, and as the air blows it to me again, obeying with my wind when I do blow, and yielding to another when it blows, commanded always by the greater gust, such is the lightness of you common men. But do not break your oaths, for of that sin my mild entreaty shall not make you guilty. Go where you will, the king shall be commanded, and be you kings, command, and I'll obey. First Keeper. We are true subjects to the king, King Edward. King Henry. So would you be again to Henry, if he were seated as King Edward is? First Keeper. We charge you, in God's name and the king's, to go with us unto the officers. King Henry. In God's name, lead, your king's name be obeyed, and what God will, that let your king perform, and what he will, I humbly yield unto. Extant Scene 2. London. The palace enter King Edward, Gloucester, Clarence, and Lady Grey. King Edward, brother of Gloucester, at St. Albans Field. This lady's husband, c. Our Richard Grey, was slain, his land then seized on by the Conqueror. Her suit is now to repossess those lands, which we in justice cannot well deny, because in quarrel of the House of York the worthy gentleman did lose his life. Gloucester. Your Highness shall do well to grant her suit. It were dishonour to deny it her. King Edward. It were no less, but yet I'll make a pause. Gloucester. Aside to Clarence. Yet is it so? I see the lady hath a thing to grant, before the king will grant her humble suit. Clarence. Aside to Gloucester. He knows the game, how true he keeps the wind. Gloucester. Aside to Clarence. Silence. King Edward. Widow, we will consider of your suit, and come some other time to know our mind. Lady Grey. Right gracious lord, I cannot brook delay. May it please your Highness to resolve me now, and what your pleasure is shall satisfy me. Gloucester. Aside, I, widow? Then I'll warrant you all your lands, and if what pleases him shall pleasure you. Fight closer, or, good faith, you'll catch a blow. Clarence. Aside to Gloucester. I fear her not, unless she chance to fall. Gloucester. Aside to Clarence. God forbid that, for he'll take vantages. King Edward. How many children hast thou, widow, tell me? Clarence. Aside to Gloucester. I think he means to beg a child of her. Gloucester. Aside to Clarence. Nay, then whip me, he'll rather give her 2. Lady Grey. 3, my most gracious lord. Gloucester. Aside, you shall have 4 if you'll be argued by him. King Edward. 'Twere pity they should lose their father's lands. Lady Grey. Be pitiful, dread lord, and grant it then. King Edward. Lords, give us leave, I'll try this widow's wit. Gloucester. Aside, I good leave have you, for you will have leave till you take leave and leave you to the crutch. Gloucester and Clarence withdraw. King Edward. Now tell me, madam, do you love your children? Lady Grey. Aye, full as dearly as I love myself. King Edward. And would you not do much to do them good? Lady Grey. To do them good I would sustain some harm. King Edward. Then get your husband's lands to do them good. Lady Grey. Therefore I came unto your majesty. King Edward. I'll tell you how these lands are to be got. Lady Grey. So shall you bind me to your Highness' service. King Edward. What service wilt thou do me if I give them? Lady Grey. What you command that rests in me to do. King Edward. But you will take exceptions to my boon. Lady Grey. No, gracious lord, except I cannot do it. King Edward. Aye, but thou canst do what I mean to ask. Lady Grey. Why, then I will do what your grace commands. Gloucester. He plies her hard, and much rain wears the marble. Clarence. As red as fire. Nay, then her wax must melt. Lady Grey. Why stops my lord? Shall I not hear my task? King Edward. an easy task, 'tis but to love a king. Lady Grey. That's soon performed, because I am a subject. King Edward. Why, then, thy husband's lands I freely give thee. Lady Grey. I take my leave with many thousand thanks. Gloucester. The match is made, she seals it with a curtsy. King Edward. But stay thee, 'tis the fruits of love I mean. Lady Grey. The fruits of love I mean, my loving liege. King Edward. Ay, but I fear me, in another sense. What love, think'st thou, I sue so much to get? Lady Grey. My love till death, my humble thanks, my prayers, that love which virtue begs and virtue grants. King Edward. No, by my troth, I did not mean such love. Lady Grey. Why, then you mean not as I thought you did. King Edward. But now you partly may perceive my mind. Lady Grey. My mind will never grant what I perceive your highness aims at, if I aim aright. King Edward. To tell thee plain, I aim to lie with thee. Lady Grey. To tell you plain, I had rather lie in prison. King Edward. Why, then thou shalt not have thy husband's lands. Lady Grey. Why, then mine honesty shall be my dower, for by that loss I will not purchase them. King Edward. Therein thou wrong'st thy children mightily. Lady Grey. Herein your highness wrongs both them and me. But, mighty lord, this merry inclination accords not with the sadness of my suit. Please you dismiss me, either with aye or no. King Edward. Aye, if thou wilt say aye to my request, no, if thou dost say no to my demand. Lady Grey. Then no, my lord. My suit is at an end. Gloucester. The widow likes him not, she knits her brows. Clarence. He is the bluntest wooer in Christendom. King Edward. Aside, her looks doth argue her replete with modesty, her words doth show her wit incomparable, all her perfections challenge sovereignty. One way or other, she is for a king, and she shall be my love, or else my queen. Say that King Edward take thee for his queen? Lady Grey. 'Tis better said than done, my gracious lord. I am a subject fit to jest withal, but far unfit to be a sovereign. King Edward. Sweet widow, by my state I swear to thee I speak no more than what my soul intends, and that is to enjoy thee for my love. Lady Grey. And that is more than I will yield un't. Oh, I know I am too mean to be your queen, and yet too good to be your concubine. King Edward. You cavil widow, I did mean my queen. Lady Grey. 'Twill grieve your grace my sons should call you father. King Edward. No more than when my daughters call thee mother. Thou art a widow, and thou hast some children, and by God's mother I, being but a bachelor, have other some. Why, 'tis a happy thing to be the father unto many sons. Answer no more, for thou shalt be my queen. Gloucester. The ghostly father now hath done his shrift. Clarence. When he was made a shriver, 'twas for shrift. King Edward. Brothers, you muse what chat we two have had. Gloucester. The widow likes it not, for she looks very sad. King Edward. You'd think it strange if I should marry her. Clarence. To who, my lord? King Edward. Why, Clarence, to myself. Gloucester. That would be 10 days' wonder at the least. Clarence. That's a day longer than a wonder lasts. Gloucester. By so much is the wonder in extremes. King Edward. Well, jest on, brothers. I can tell you both her suit is granted for her husband's lands. Enter a nobleman, nobleman. My gracious lord, Henry your foe is taken and brought your prisoner to your palace gate. King Edward. See that he be conveyed unto the Tower. And go we, brothers, to the man that took him to question of his apprehension. Widow, go you along. Lords, use her honourably. Exeunt all but Gloucester. Gloucester. Aye, Edward will use women honourably. Would he were wasted, marrow, bones, and all, that from his loins no hopeful branch may spring to cross me from the golden time I look for. And yet between my soul's desire and me the lustful Edward's title buried is Clarence, Henry, and his son young Edward, and all the unlooked-for issue of their bodies, to take their rooms ere I can place myself. A cold premeditation for my purpose. Why, then I do but dream on sovereignty, like one that stands upon a promontory and spies a far-off shore where he would tread, wishing his foot were equal with his eye, and chides the sea that sunders him from thence, saying he'll lade it dry to have his way. So do I wish the crown, being so far off, and so I chide the means that keeps me from it, and so I say I'll cut the causes off, flattering me with impossibilities. My eye is too quick, my heart o'erweens too much, unless my hand and strength could equal them. Well, say there is no kingdom then for Richard, what other pleasure can the world afford? I'll make my heaven in a lady's lap, and deck my body in gay ornaments, and witch sweet ladies with my words and looks. O miserable thought! And more unlikely than to accomplish 20 golden crowns. Why, love forswore me in my mother's womb, and for I should not deal in her soft laws, she did corrupt frail nature with some bribe to shrink mine arm up like a withered shrub, to make an envious mountain on my back, where sits deformity, to mock my body, to shape my legs of an unequal size, to disproportion me in every part, like to a chaos, or an unlicked bare whelp that carries no impression like the dam. And am I, then, a man to be beloved? O monstrous fault to harbor such a thought! Then, since this earth affords no joy to me but to command, to check, to o'erbear such as are of better person than myself, I'll make my heaven to dream upon the crown, and whiles I live to account this world but hell, until my misshapen trunk that bear this head be round impaled with a glorious crown. And yet I know not how to get the crown, for many lives stand between me and home, and I like one lost in a thorny wood that rents the thorns and is rent with the thorns, seeking a way and straying from the way, not knowing how to find the open air, but toiling desperately to find it out. Torment myself to catch the English crown, and from that torment I will free myself, or hew my way out with a bloody axe. Why, I can smile, and murder whiles I smile, and cry content to that which grieves my heart, and wet my cheeks with artificial tears, and frame my face to all occasions. I'll drown more sailors than the mermaid shall, I'll slay more gazers than the basilisk, I'll play the orator as well as Nestor, deceive more slyly than Ulysses could, and, like a Sinon, take another Troy. I can add colors to the chameleon, change shapes with Protheus for advantages, and set the murderous Machiavel to school. Can I do this, and cannot get a crown? Tut, were it farther off, I'll pluck it down. Exit Scene 3. France. The King's Palace flourish. Enter Louis the French King, his sister Bona, his admiral called Bourbon, Prince Edward, Queen Margaret, and the Earl of Oxford. Louis sits, and riseth up again. Louis. Fair Queen of England, worthy Margaret, sit down with us. It ill befits thy state and birth that thou shouldst stand while Louis doth sit. Queen Margaret. No, mighty King of France. Now Margaret must strike her sail and learn a while to serve where kings command. I was, I must confess, great Albion's queen in former olden days, but now mischance hath trod my title down, and with dishonour laid me on the ground, where I must take like seat unto my fortune, and to my humble seat conform myself. Louis. Why, say, fair Queen, whence springs this deep despair? Queen Margaret. From such a cause as fills mine eyes with tears and stops my tongue, while heart is drowned in cares. Louis. Whatever it be thou still like thyself, and sit thee by our side. Seats her by him, yield not thy neck to fortune's yoke, but let thy dauntless mind still ride in triumph over all mischance. Be plain, Queen Margaret, and tell thy grief. It shall be aest, if France can yield relief. Queen Margaret. Those gracious words revive my drooping thoughts and give my tongue-tied sorrows leave to speak. Now therefore be it known to noble Louis that Henry, sole possessor of my love, is, of a king, become a banished man, and forked to live in Scotland a forlorn, while proud ambitious Edward Duke of York usurps the regal title and the seat of England's true anointed lawful king. This is the cause that I, poor Margaret, with this my son, Prince Edward, Henry's heir, am come to crave thy just and lawful aid, and if thou fail us, all our hope is done. Scotland hath will to help, but cannot help, our people and our peers are both misled, our treasure seized, our soldiers put to flight, and, as thou sayest, ourselves in heavy plight. Lewis, renowned Queen, with patience calm the storm, while we bethink a means to break it off. Queen Margaret, the more we stay, the stronger grows our foe. Lewis, the more I stay, the more I'll succor thee. Queen Margaret, oh, but impatience waiteth on true sorrow. And see where comes the breeder of my sorrow. Enter Warwick Lewis. What's he approacheth boldly to our presence? Queen Margaret, our Earl of Warwick, Edward's greatest friend. Lewis, welcome, brave Warwick. What brings thee to France? He descends. Shiari saith Queen Margaret. Ah, and now begins a second storm to rise, for this is he that moves both wind and tide. Warwick, from worthy Edward, King of Albion, my lord and sovereign, and thy vowed friend, I come, in kindness and unfeigned love, first to do greetings to thy royal person, and then to crave a league of amity, and lastly to confirm that amity with nuptial knot, if thou vouchsafe to grant that virtuous Lady Bona, thy fair sister, to England's king in lawful marriage. Queen Margaret, aside, if that go forward, Henry's hope is done. Warwick, to Bona, and gracious madam, in our king's behalf, I am commanded, with your leave and favour, humbly to kiss your hand, and with my tongue to tell the passion of my sovereign's heart, where fame, late entering at his heedful ears, hath placked thy beauty's image and thy virtue. Queen Margaret, King Louis and Lady Bona, hear me speak before you answer Warwick. His demand springs not from Edward's well-meant honest love, but from deceit bred by necessity. For how can tyrants safely govern home unless abroad they purchase great alliance? To prove him tyrant this reason may suffice, that Henry liveth still, but were he dead, yet here Prince Edward stands, King Henry's son. Look therefore, Louis, that by this league and marriage thou draw not on thy danger and dishonour. For though usurpers sway the rule a while, yet heathenesse are just, and time suppresseth wrongs. Warwick, injurious Margaret, Prince of Wales. And why not Queen? Warwick, because thy father Henry did usurp, and thou no more art prince than she is queen. Oxford, then Warwick disowned great John of Gaunt, which did subdue the greatest part of Spain, and, after John of Gaunt, Henry IV, whose wisdom was a mirror to the wisest, and, after that wise prince, Henry V, who by his prowess conquered all France. From these our Henry lineally descends. Warwick, Oxford, how haps it in this smooth discourse you told not how Henry VI hath lost all that which Henry V had gotten? Methinks these peers of France should smile at that. But for the rest, you tell a pedigree of 62 years a silly time to make prescription for a kingdom's worth. Oxford, why, Warwick, canst thou speak against thy liege, whom thou obeyedst 36 years, and not betray thy treason with a blush? Warwick, can Oxford that did ever fence the right now buckler falsehood with a pedigree? For shame! Leave Henry, and call Edward king. Oxford, call him my king by whose injurious doom my elder brother, the Lord Aubrey Vere, was done to death, and more than so, my father, even in the downfall of his mellowed years, when nature brought him to the door of death. No, Warwick, no, while life upholds this arm upholds the house of Lancaster. Warwick, and I the house of York. Lewis, Queen Margaret, Prince Edward, and Oxford, vouchsafe at our request to stand aside while I use further conference with Warwick. They stand aloof, Queen Margaret. Heavens grant that Warwick's words bewitch him not. Lewis, now Warwick T. L. me, even upon thy conscience, is Edward your true king? for I were loath to link with him that were not lawful chosen. Warwick. Thereon I pawn my credit and mine honor. Lewis. But is he gracious in the people's eye? Warwick. The more that Henry was unfortunate. Lewis. Then further, all dissembling set aside, tell me for truth the measure of his love unto our sister Bona. Warwick. Such it seems as may beseem a monarch like himself. Myself have often heard him say and swear that this his love was an eternal plant whereof the root was fixed in virtue's ground, the leaves and fruit maintained with beauty's sun, exempt from envy, but not from disdain, unless the Lady Bona quit his pain. Lewis. Now, sister, let us hear your firm resolve. Bona. Your grant or your denial shall be mine. To Warwick, yet I confess that often ere this day, when I have heard your king's desert recounted, mine ear hath tempted judgment to desire. Lewis. Then, Warwick, thus, our sister shall be Edward's. And now forthwith shall articles be drawn touching the jointure that your king must make, which with her dowry shall be counterput. Draw near, Queen Margaret, and be a witness that Bona shall be wife to the English king. Prince of Wales. To Edward, but not to the English king. Queen Margaret. Deceitful Warwick, it was thy device by this alliance to make void my suit. Before thy coming, Lewis was Henry's friend. Lewis. And still is friend to him, and Margaret. But if your title to the crown be weak, as may appear by Edward's good success, then 'tis but reason that I be released from giving aid which late I promised. Yet shall you have all kindness at my hand that your estate requires and mine can yield. Warwick. Henry now lives in Scotland at his case, where having nothing, nothing can he lose. And as for you yourself, our quondam queen, you have a father able to maintain you, and better 'twere you troubled him than France. Queen Margaret. Peace, impudent and shameless Warwick, proud set her up and pull her down of kings. I will not hence till with my talk and tears, both full of truth, I make King Louis behold thy sly conveyance, and thy lord's false love, for both of you are birds of self-same feather. Post blowing a horn within. Louis. Warwick, this is some post to us or thee. Enter the post. My Lord Ambassador, these letters are for you, sent from your brother, Marquis Montague. These from our king unto your majesty. And madam, these for you, from whom I know not. They all read their letters, Oxford. I like it well that our fair queen and mistress smiles at her news, while Warwick frowns at his. Prince of Wales. Nay, mark how Louis stamps as he were nettled. I hope all's for the best. Louis. Warwick, what are thy news? And yours, fair queen? Queen Margaret. Mine such as fill my heart with unhopped joys. Warwick. Mine, full of sorrow and heart's discontent. Louis. What, has your king married the Lady Grey? And now, to soothe your forgery and his, sends me a paper to persuade me patience? Is this th alliance that he seeks with France? Dare he presume to scorn us in this manner? Queen Margaret. I told your majesty as much before. This proveth Edward's love and Warwick's honesty. Warwick. King Louis, I here protest in sight of heaven, and by the hope I have of heavenly bliss, that I am clear from this misdeed of Edward's no more my king, for he dishonours me, but most himself, if he could see his shame. Did I forget that by the house of York my father came untimely to his death? Did I let pass th abuse done to my niece? Did I impale him with the regal crown? Did I put Henry from his native right? And am I guerdoned at the last with shame? Shame on himself. For my desert is honor, and to repair my honor lost for him I here renounce him and return to Henry. My noble queen, let former grudges pass, and henceforth I am thy true servitor. I will revenge his wrong to Lady Bona, and replant Henry in his former state. Queen Margaret. Warwick, these words have turned my hate to love, and I forgive and quite forget old faults, and joy that thou becomest King Henry's friend. Warwick. So much his friend, I, his unfeigned friend, that if King Louis vouchsafe to furnish us with some few bands of chosen soldiers, I'll undertake to land them on our coast and force the tyrant from his seat by war. 'Tis not his new-made bride shall succor him, and as for Clarence, as my letters tell me, he's very likely now to fall from him for matching more for wanton lust than honor or than for strength and safety of our country. Bona, dear brother, how shall Bona be revenged but by thy help to this distressed queen? Queen Margaret, renowned prince, how shall poor Henry live unless thou rescue him from foul despair? Bona, my quarrel and this English queen's are one. Warwick, and mine, fair Lady Bona, joins with yours. Louis, and mine with hers, and thine and Margaret's. Therefore, at last, I firmly am resolved you shall have aid. Queen Margaret, let me give humble thanks for all at once. Louis, then, England's messenger, return in post and tell false Edward, thy supposed king, that Louis of France is sending over maskers to revel it with him and his new bride. Thou sayest what's past, go fear thy king withal. Bona, tell him, in hope he'll prove a widower shortly, I'll wear the willow garland for his sake. Queen Margaret, tell him my mourning weeds are laid aside, and I am ready to put armor on. Warwick, tell him from me that he hath done me wrong, and therefore I'll uncrown him ere't be long. There's thy reward, be gone. Exit post Louis. But Warwick, thou in Oxford, with 5,000 men, shall cross the seas and bid false Edward battle, and, as occasion serves, this noble queen and prince shall follow with a fresh supply. Yet, ere thou go, but answer me one doubt, what pledge have we of thy firm loyalty? Warwick, this shall assure my constant loyalty, that if our queen and this young prince agree, I'll join mine eldest daughter and my joy to him forthwith in holy wedlock bands. Queen Margaret, yes, I agree, and thank you for your motion. Son Edward, she is fair and virtuous, therefore delay not, give thy hand to Warwick, and with thy hand thy faith irrevocable that only Warwick's daughter shall be thine. Prince of Wales, yes, I accept her, for she well deserves it, and here, to pledge my vow, I give my hand. He gives his hand to Warwick. Louis, stay we now? These soldiers shall be levied, and thou, Lord Bourbon, our High Admiral, shall waft them over with our royal fleet. I long till Edward fall by war's mischance for mocking marriage with a dame of France. Excellent all but Warwick. Warwick, I came from Edward as ambassador, but I return his sworn and mortal foe. Matter of marriage was the charge he gave me, but dreadful war shall answer his demand. Had he none else to make a stale but me? Then none but I shall turn his jest to sorrow. I was the chief that riced him to the crown, and I'll be chief to bring him down again, not that I pity Henry's misery, but seek revenge on Edward's mockery. Exit.